Hey guys, this is Dr. Hub. In case you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to learn and grow daily.
Now we'll be doing the hair cycle. So under the hair cycle, the hair follicles it undergoes repetitive sequence of growth, and the rest is known as the hair cycle. So it's a sequence of growth plus rest. And the hair cycle is usually described in three phases. So phases wise, it is three. One is nothing but the anagen. Then comes the catagen, and then the telogen. So anagen, catagen, and the telogen. So the mnemonic being ACT. Now let's look at each phase in detail. So what is anagen? Anagen is a period of active hair growth. So it is active. A for anagen, A for active. Active hair growth. And it is known as the anagen, the active hair growth, and the duration of the phase is responsible for determining the final length. So it determines the final length of hair. Next is the entry of the resting hair follicle into the anagen is heralded by the onset of mitotic activity on the epithelial cells. So mitotic activity depends on the mitotic activity of the epithelial cells overlying the dermal papillae at the base of the follicle. So under the normal circumstances, 80 to 90% of the hair follicles are under the anagen phase. So you can tell about 90% falls under the anagen phase. And anagen phase, it continues for several years. So it continues for the several years. Next, we move on to the catagen. Next, what we move on is the catagen phase. So under this catagen phase is the end of the anagen phase, the epithelial cell division, it declines and ceases. So what we see is the epithelial cells, the activity it reduces, it ceases or it declines, and the follicle it enters an involuntary phase. So this is nothing but an involuntary phase. So this is known as the catagen. So during the catagen, the proximal end of the hair shaft it keratinizes. So the proximal end it keratinizes. It keratinizes and it forms a club shaped structure. Club shaped structure, and the lower part of the follicle it involutes by apoptosis. The proximal part of the hair shaft keratinizes, forms a club shaped structure, and the lower part it forms the lower part of the follicle involutes by apoptosis. Next is the basement membrane surrounding the follicles, it becomes thickened. The basal membrane surrounding the follicles it becomes thickened and corrugated and forms a glassy membrane. This is nothing but property of the basal membrane. So it undergoes changes and forms a glassy membrane like pattern. So this catagen phase it goes up to 10 days. Whereas we saw the anagen phase, the key point being it is active phase and it lasts for several years, whereas the catagen phase it goes up to 10 days. Next we move on to the telogen phase. So this telogen phase is the time period between the catagen and the next anagen. So it lies between the catagen to the next anagen. So this lasts up to 3 months. So what do we comment on the durations? Anagen phase was for years, Then comes the catagen phase. It was for 3 months. It was for a few days, that is 10 days, and then the telogen for 3 months. So when you look at the club hair, it is usually shed. The club hair, it is shed, and through the active process known as the exogen. So shed with a process known as exogen. In the human scalp, the hair follicles, it remains in a state of latency, and this known as kinogen. So latency phase is known as kinogen. Shedding was known as exogen. Latent phase is known as the kinogen. And for a prolonged period after the club hair is shed.
Channel.